This video is going to be a demonstration of drawing hands with a biro. I've attached to the email that I'm sending some of you this handout with some explanations, some diagrams and some developed drawings of hands. You can also find those on my website, damiancallan.com. But I'm going to demonstrate now with my own left hand. Let's sit it like that. And I'm going to begin just with a very quick diagram to show you how I was taught how to draw hands by the great George Donald, who not only taught me how to draw hands, but he taught me how to teach people how to draw hands. So I'm going to do a few diagrammatic lines first. So this is going to be my wrist, and so my wrist is somewhere there, the crease of my wrist behind my watch, put the watch in, why not? And then my hand broadens out to my knuckle, which goes up to about there. So I find the wrist, then the knuckle, then I draw a bit of an outline for my fingers, which go off there, something like that. And then I do the thumb next, which is on a plane, a kind of triangular hinge, a little bit like that. Well, the light's quite good because that's quite dark in that area. And that's where my thumb is attached to the hand, a bit like that. So these are only lines and diagrammatic lines. I could have gone, before I did the thumb, I could have used the line of the knuckle and the outline of the fingers just to place the fingers. So that's the first finger coming from the line of the knuckle, then the next one like that, and then I can only just see a little bit of the last two fingers because they're one behind the other. So these are construction lines, and that probably should be a little bit bigger there. And having put down those construction lines, I could then draw into them. So here's the wrist. I'm not really bothering too much about the watch, but maybe that's quite useful because the way it goes around a wrist is quite useful. I'm also wanting to demonstrate how to draw with a biro, and in a minute I'll cover a page with lots of hands, but I will encourage you as well with the biro. This is my construction line to explain mapping out the hand, but it's also done fairly faintly. And if you're going to work with biro, I would say don't press too hard at the beginning. Just get something a little bit provisional that you then strengthen. And working with biro is working with ink, and that's actually quite useful because ink always makes us much more decisive. And I forgot a finger, look, there's a finger in there. So we can put a finger in there. And a thumb, which seems to go out there a bit more with a thumbnail. So having done some tentative lines, I've now strengthened them a bit, but they're all outlines. But this business of modelling the hand and finding some of those planes, if I look with my eyes half closed, I can see a shadow on my wrist. I've got a dark watch band, a shadow under here, and actually I can see all of that plane there, which is the point at which the thumb connects to the rest of the hand. And then this first finger, one half of it is dark and the other is light. And the same with the thumb, half of it is light and half of it is dark. So I'm just doing some shading. It's quite good to keep it all going in the same direction. Not too much, just hatching, not cross-hatching. And of course that finger in there is also dark. And I might shade that a little bit darker so that that works. So that's a basic demonstration just to get that hand started. On the sheet I've done a number of examples, but the additional things that are on that sheet, the additional points are, sometimes it helps to put a shadow. So my hand is casting a bit of a shadow on the table there. So when I put on the shadow, that helps make the hand stand out. The other thing is to add accents. So accents are just small dark marks, and I've put them particularly along this edge here. And often you might see some points, just looking with your eyes half closed, you might see places on the fingers where you think, well, actually that could be a bit darker. And when you put in these dark accents, there's a bit of a shadow in there, they often help make the form stand out more. Now the problem with my hand, I think, is these fingers. They're not really very good. I think I might need a bit more shadow over there. And I could also use the Biro, maybe just to get some contours, because hands, fingers, these are round shapes. Fingers are kind of cylindrical forms. And you can sometimes find if you just make small marks, it's a little bit like etching, building up some small rounded marks to show some of those contours. That can help with the modelling and the explanation, the description you're trying to make of your hand. So there's hand number one. What I recommend you do is take a sheet of paper. This is just ordinary printing paper, and try lots of different hands. So here's a hand upside down, palm down. Let's do it there. I'll do it over here, and I'll go a little bit smaller. So here's the wrist. The line of the wrist is going off to the side, and then the knuckle is there. And the shape of the fingers, first finger, second finger, which is bent, and then the outline of those smaller fingers is something like that. And of course they come in there. So I kept it fairly faint. That's the side of the hand there. The thumb is going to be on that triangle, and the thumb is going off there. So that's my diagram. I hope that's visible. So now I'm just going to use that as a guide and change things. I think the wrist is a bit thicker. That's a rounder shape coming up to the thumb. Actually, I should have done the fingers first, shouldn't I? So the fingers, there's the first finger. The next finger is bent. And the third finger is even more bent, like that. So those construction lines I started with, I will change them. They're tentative, they're provisional, and they can be altered. So that's a bit better, I think. Still got my wrist strap on. So strengthen some of those lines. Maybe now a little bit of modelling. If I look with my eyes half closed, there's the muscle of the thumb. The side of the hand here is in shadow. These fingers, eyes half closed, most of them actually are in shadow. Well, the two bent fingers are. The straight fingers are half light, half shaded. And this finger isn't shaded at all, isn't straight. It's got a fingernail there and some creases here. And yeah, a bit of shading on the thumb and that half of the thumb. So what I recommend you try doing is just lots of hands. Use your left hand as the model and draw with your right hand. Try things like constructing it in the way I said. See what the effect of a shadow is. And another thing on the handout is to work with a negative shape. My hand here is against, that's a long thumb. My hand is against a white background, but it could have been against a dark background. And one of the drawings on the handout is against a dark background, and I've just filled in the negative shape. Let's try that here. Of the background, a bit time consuming when you're doing Biro, but quite good fun as well, just to get a bit freer with your use of the materials. And by surrounding it with a negative shape, a dark one, that already helps. And I could again strengthen the shadow and find a few places, there's probably a nail, isn't there? A few places to strengthen here, to put accents in. So that's what I suggest you try today. but cover a whole page, and you'll see with my handout, and you get lots of hands on there. It's quite nice, it becomes quite eloquent. It's a little bit like sign language. It's as though these hands are trying to communicate something to you. Do lots of them, work with the biro, maybe put 6 on a page. Some of them will be bad, some of them will be good, and you can even cut out the good ones like I did on the handout and stick them on a separate page as you make progress.